time, we have the greatest DJ in the universe, DJ Rhino here, just busting up the mix.
Right.
But congratulations, DJ Rhino, going to a graduation of the adorable little one this weekend. So much big shout out to DJ Rhino, man.
Congratulations. Ride, Rhino, ride.
And
Congratulations to your daughter.
so we just hijacked your segment right now. And and so we brought in.
We're covering down.
We're coming down with some legendary activists, people who I always have just so much respect for because of the work that they've done and continue to do to this day. We have with us Brother Zayid Muhammad, who is a long-term activist in New Jersey and New York. I just found out today that he, among the many other things that like police violence, violence, right, within our community, with the Newark Anti-Violence Coalition, and one of the many things he has worked on over the years. One of them was also the case of the Central Park Five, and hopefully during the course of this night, we're going to be talking about that and that documentary. And we also have the legendary activist, the leader of People's Organization for Progress, Larry Hamm. Larry Hamm has been an activist since he was a teenager.
Runner, that's right.
Yeah, since he was a teenager, as the youngest appointed member of the school board election of the Newark Public School Board by Ken Gibson, and has been an activist ever since. So thank you for coming to All Politics Are Local. We had some heated elections just now, or at least elections. I don't know if they were heated, but we had some elections, right?
They were heated.
So they were heated. We had some heated elections in this past June 4th, and those elections are over. And the elections that were in this part of Essex County, there was the East Orange Mayor, Green, who had a slate of candidates on the Green team, and they won. And that's the first thing that you wanted to talk about, like who won and who were the winners, losers, and what does that mean for policy in Essex County and New Jersey going forward. So Larry Hamm, I know you have some thoughts on this, so what's going on, man?
Well, glad to be here, power to the people, and just want to give a quick shout out to the nursing home workers. I'm literally just coming off the turnpike from Pensacola in New Jersey. I was asked to come down today to support the nursing home workers who are in a struggle with the Riverfront Rehabilitation Care company with whom they work. And they're struggling because the company is trying to dissolve their contract. And this had a special place in my heart, and I'm not going to dwell on this long. I'm going to go to the subject, but this had a place in my heart because the last 3 years of her life, my mother spent in the White House nursing home. So I'm deeply familiar with how valuable nursing home workers are. I mean, you know,
My mother was a geriatric nurse.
Right, and you think about the doctor being important, but the doctor comes in, looks at the senior citizen and makes a diagnosis and move on. It's the nursing home workers that turn them every day so they don't get bed sores, that help them go to the bathroom and so on and so forth. So I went down there to help them. And on the way up the road, I just want to shout out the name Al Jarreau. You know, Al Jarreau passed away almost a year ago. And he wasn't like the most well-known, but he was known like in the jazz.
Jazz
artist.
And he was also pop. He had a couple of pop hits.
That's
in
right.
the 80s.
Yeah, he crossed
pop
over
albums. Yes.
That's right. And we rarely talk about him, but he along with Bob Marley and Gil Scott-Heron helped me to get through college.
Oh, wow.
You know. So now to the subject at hand. Yes, the primary elections for 2019 are over. These elections involved races at the local and state level. In some counties, you had municipal elections where you have partisan elections in those municipalities. Like Newark is a non-partisan, so people don't run as Democrats and Republicans. But East Orange is partisan. People run as Democrats and Republicans. So when you went in the voting machine, one side of the ballot had the Democratic candidates and the other side had the Republican candidates. So you had municipal offices that were up, you had, and county freeholder in some places, not all. In some places, county freeholder offices were up, and other county positions like surrogate and so on. And then you had the state legislative offices, assembly persons, and state senators were up. In Essex County, there was a contest. There was a group of people that presented themselves as the Progressive Democrats, and they challenged the incumbents, and the incumbents won, which was not that surprising, although Carol Clark, a former freeholder and former city council person of East Orange, was on the ballot, and she was quite popular during the time that she served in office, and she ran again, I believe, for the county registrar. She ran
registrar for property, or
right.
Now, did she win?
No, she didn't win, but in the black communities, if you look at the return, she got a significant portion of votes. Her other team members were not as fortunate as she was. I mean, none of them were able to win, but Carol Clark showed that she had support in the community, so she got a significant number of votes.
So even though it was a loss with an asterisk around it.
Yeah.
As in, like, you didn't have the backing of the machine.
Right.
But if you built a little bit more, you've already had it was a credible challenge.
Right. So the incumbents won, and I think one of the reasons the incumbents won, particularly
except for Carol Clark.
No, Carol Clark was not in office. No,
she was
not in
She was
incumbent.
taking Gaynor Roan's office.
This was years ago. Some years ago, she was a city council person, and then she was on, I believe, the board of freeholders for Essex County. So she's been out of office for some time.
Okay.
And she challenged, and I'm not going to go into why she's a better spokesperson for herself, you know. But suffice it to say that the incumbents won, and in the district where I live, Brittany Timberlake was one of the candidates, and
she's been putting out legislation after legislation after legislation.
And that's why she
won. That's been really like
right.
legislation that's been a long time coming. It's like she's only been there for like 2 years.
Fresh person legislator.
Right.
That's given us some groundbreaking legislation.
Like, because she's a freshman legislator,
That's
right?
Right. She's a
She
freshman.
came in on the heels of
Minimum
Sue Oliver
wage.
going up to the governor's office as lieutenant governor, and was probably the youngest in the assembly right now, if I'm not mistaken. Is she the youngest?
If she's not, she's close to it.
Yeah.
Because she's like 30 or something like that.
She's a young woman. You know?
Right.
Yeah.
And the legislation that was passed was legislation that had been fought for years.
Right.
Like $50 minimum wage, having an independent prosecutor.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
actually,
Very
I
important.
think, and both of you can speak to this more.
Right.
The independent prosecutor law that was passed.
Right.
Is that the reason why the cop that thought it was the Wild West in Newark, that was indicted? Is that the reason why he was indicted? Was he indicted under that law?
No. Well, let's see.
Because the indictment was shocking, right?
Right.
The fact
No, because there was not a death. Oh, yes, there was.
Yes.
There was a
somebody
death.
died. Yes.
So in the independent investigation, because it's actually not an independent prosecutor, it's an independent investigation that's conducted by a representative of the state attorney general. Normally, in these situations, the county prosecutor is the representative of the state attorney general.
Right.
But in the cases where police shooting results in death, it automatically triggers a person from the state attorney general's office to come in and investigate.
Now, is that what happened here?
Yes.
So is that the reason why he was? Because normally in cases like this, I don't remember a cop being indicted for something reckless, right? Reckless is not a standard for indictment.
Right.
Because it clearly is reckless. I mean, you're running around shooting into a car, right? But we've seen other things that have been done that have been more reckless. And you've had protests about cops doing things that are way more reckless and do not get indicted. Do you think that the independent prosecutor law that Brittany Timberlake helped write and pass, do you think that that was the reason why this police officer is being prosecuted now?
Yes and yes. And I'm saying that twice because it's not just that. Let us also remember that the Newark Police Department is under the scrutiny of a federal monitor.
Right.
And that federal monitor is there as a consequence of the people's protests that put pressure on the system to make that happen. So let's just say using police language, Newark Police Department is not only under scrutiny, but as a consequence of that scrutiny, they're also on their best behavior, right? So they
or at least we're on their best behavior.
right? So they recognize that they had this situation that's hot, and with all this scrutiny, so there was motion of some structural motion within their own structure to demonstrate accountability.
Wait, hold on, time out.
Right.
Because I'm not sure if I understand what you're saying, right? Are you telling me that part of the the monitor and the law, right, helped create an independent impetus from within the police structures to hold themselves accountable?
That's what it appears.
Yes.
That's exactly what it
Yes.
appears like. Yeah.
I think,
Which is actually healthy.
right.
Right. I mean, that's what it,
That's
it
where
should have
we
been.
wanted to go.
That's where it should have
Right.
been. Were they trying to say?
I think it's all of the above. I think Zayid is right. The fact that the Newark Police Department is under a consent decree, under a federal monitor, the fact that the city of Newark elected a mayor who ran on an anti-police brutality platform,
and getting a civilian police review
and
board.
setting up a
We're still
review
fighting
board,
for it. That's right.
and the independent prosecutor law. Let's call it for argument's sake. Let's call it the independent prosecutor law. All of those work together to produce the fact that this officer was under grand jury investigation and was indicted.
Because if they mess this up, because it seems like when you look at it, the police officers seem to act recklessly. But of course, you have to do due diligence. There has to be a trial. There has to be
Right.
evidence,
Sure.
right?
Right.
You have to make sure all these things
Sure.
are done.
That's right.
But and in our community, we don't have a problem with any of that. It's usually only when the opposite is done, like when there are no explanations, when it's just, hey, Negro, you just have to accept what we did. And that becomes the source of tension.
Right.
If they get this wrong, if they come out with something that doesn't seem to make sense, that doesn't seem to be supported by the evidence, that's Negro, you just need to get over it. I think that the demand for a civilian complaint review board will be overwhelming.
Right. Well, the review board is not going to be involved in this.
That's right.
Because
That's right.
he's been indicted.
Right.
He's going to trial
Right.
now.
Right.
This is not going to be handled
Right.
by the review board.
Right.
Or wouldn't have even been handled by a review board. A
If-
review board would give evidence so that there could be a
If,
trial.
right. If he hadn't been indicted,
Right.
the review board may have taken it up. But right now, the review board is hamstrung because it's being challenged in state appellate court.
Right.
But this particular officer has been indicted. He's going to trial. What's noticeable is that his fellow officers are rallying behind him,
Yes, holding fundraisers.
fundraisers for his defense, and so on and so forth. So we need to keep our eye on this situation. I want to commend those activists. I saw a Facebook post from Donna Jackson and some of her colleagues. They posted they were outside the establishment where this fundraiser was going on. So I want to commend them for putting the spotlight on that situation.
Wow. So when we're looking at the situation, so we started talking about the election and its consequences,
Right.
and so we're talking about Brittany Timberlake and the legislation. That legislation was hot, and that's why I had to bring up
Right.
the current issues of police
Right.
brutality.
Right.
Are they a result of legislation? So elections matter.
Yes.
Legislation matters.
Yes.
Voting
Right.
matters.
Voting
Yes.
matters.
And this is an issue that we need to put a thumbnail in, and that is that the voter turnout in this primary election was abysmally low. It was like a school board election.
Wow.
The numbers were so low. In my district, when I went to vote, it was like, in the morning, and usually most of the working people vote before they go to work in the
Yes.
morning. I was number 12. And
Yeah, I got to make a confession though, man. I gotta come right. I gotta say what really happened with me, because these are, it was 4 o'clock. I still didn't vote. And it was 5 o'clock, and I still didn't. It was
Why?
6 o'clock. I still didn't vote. And good
Why?
question, why? I was gonna tell you why. You
That's
know
a-
why? You know why? You
Why?
know why I did
That's
not
a-
vote
why?
until 6:30, 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock. I did not even think about voting that day until my sister sent me a text. My good sister, Annette Alston, said, Jonathan, did you vote today?
Our
As
sister.
text, right?
Our
Yes,
sister
yes.
did also.
But she's my biological. I claim my
On her
biological
post.
sister, but
That's
she
your
be
real
everybody's
sister.
sister.
On
That's
her
good.
post. That's right.
Did you make it in time?
Should get your
I did.
behind
I did.
And just think, you're a talk show
Yes.
host that
Yes.
talks about
Yes.
politics.
I didn't say vote
Master
all the
teacher.
time.
So-
Vote in every election.
Got our
Oh,
baby
vote.
heads in
If
Palmer's
you
hands.
needed a wake up call,
I needed a reminder.
Imagine what the average person
That's right.
I
who
was
doesn't
on the-
think
Make it
about
plain, make
politics.
it plain.
Word, I was on the other side of town. I was actually, I was on the other side of town.
love
I
you
was
and that.
working out my knee, just like on the other side of town. And, I just finished on the other side of town working out my knee. I get a text. Text was like, did you vote yet? And I'm like, ooh.
Right?
Oof. I know I did not
We love
vote.
that sister.
But you made
So,
it. But you
yeah, I made it. I got in my
made it.
car, drove down,
You made it.
went in. It was like 7:40.
Yeah.
So I voted at 7:40
Right.
on Tuesday.
Right. Good. You
And
made
so I made it. But I understand why, I went through my whole day.
Yeah.
And there were no reminders, nothing. And
Right.
not that you should need, I should not need reminders. I'm not making that excuse. But during elections, like during the mayor's race, right?
Right.
Like you go out, you see everybody's colors, right? All
Right.
over.
Right.
You see, it's election day because there's been lead up, there's been build up. It's been huge
Green
all
team
over
was
the
in there
seats.
green.
Right, there's green all over, right? Like red team all over, right? There was one candidate for mayoral election a couple of years back. The color was was orange and blue. And when you woke up that morning, all I saw all over the city was orange and blue.
Right.
I was like, oh wow, this is not this. Well, I was thinking, oh, that's not good.
Right.
But there's a lot of people out there. So, but I mean, and here there was absolutely no
Right.
none of that, right?
Well, see, I challenge all politics are local from now on. The show that precedes any given election, y'all should put out some PSAs saying, "Don't
Need to
forget to
vote.
go vote." That's right.
Don't forget to go vote.
And
And we did have all the candidates on.
We did, and I was
Yeah,
interviewing
okay.
most of them,
That's right.
and I forgot.
Right.
Assemblywoman
tell
Brittany
your story.
Timberlake was right here.
That's right.
So we were talking about the good legislation she had
Sitting
done.
right where you sitting.
And I have to say, I have to confess,
Yeah.
I had to come clean.
But imagine if that's your situation. Imagine what the average person who
Who
doesn't
doesn't
talk
have your
about-
background. That's
doesn't
right.
talk about politics.
That's right.
So people need to be reminded, and this doesn't bode well for next year. A low voter turnout.
Not
This was like a school
Come
board
on.
election, So people.
somebody's calling in.
All right, so but they're taking that out there first.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it's important that people come out and vote, and we remind people now. This was the primary. The next election will be the general election in November, and that's when it's Republican versus
Versus
Democrat,
Democrat, yes.
and people should come out. And
Because
then-
if you don't vote, they might just get in. Like people just take it for granted that
Right.
it's a Democratic district,
Right.
it's a Democratic town.
Right, and there's a what did they used to call it in the army? Cyber ops, psyops.
Psychological operations.
Right, psyops is when they wage a propaganda war against you. What happened?
All right, so we have a caller that's coming in.
Okay.
And I think this caller is called in before. We like this caller because the caller listens to our show. So, Che, are you there? Hey, Che, are you there?
Good evening, gentlemen. How you doing? Yes, I'm here.
Hey, Che, man, I'm glad you're calling in. You call in our show quite frequently, don't you?
I tried to, man. It's me and my son at the park, and we're done playing, and y'all are touching on something that I think is an important frequency that the community needs to pay attention to. I try to tune into it, even though there's various opinions. But I called in just to encourage you gentlemen to keep doing the discussion that you're doing. And my question to Big Brother Zayid is, where do we go from here? In the context of some of the work that has been going on over the last 8 years, the consent decree, the schools, but where do we go from here in terms of getting more younger folks who are between the ages of 16 and 25 to value their future? That was the only question. It was simple. It wasn't no geopolitical question. Okay.
Now, basically, Che,
but it has geopolitical ramifications.
Yes, it does.
absolutely, and I would like to say, Che, all your questions have been good.
Yeah,
Like I recognize the name, recognize the voice. I'm like, yes, I like you listening to our show. Call in, ask questions. Your questions are always good.
Che, well, I appreciate your question 1,000-fold, but I would simply say that we just have to do as everything that we can, and there are no magic bullets in this thing. Even though we've got all this experience, in our history, trying to get in touch with another generation, there's no magic bullets, that are in this. We just have to do what we can and do everything that we're supposed to be doing, to get them engaged. And those that are engaged, we need to make sure that we're working with them properly. That we're giving them the kind of advice and direction that they need. We're giving them the access they need to participate at the level of potential that they certainly express and demonstrate. You're right there with your son. That's very instructive. The segment that we had on just before we came on was a group of high school seniors, right? All kinds of instructive potential in that, And all of us in our own ways in the community, we try to keep our hands on as many young people as we can. And we need to continue to do that, So there's no magic bullet. We just need to make sure that our doors are open, right? And when they sit down in our chairs and to listen to us, and we give them everything they absolutely need from us in order to move forward.
Gotcha.
All right, so thank you. So thank you, Che.
Let me ask a question.
Yeah, jump in this, yes.
Of the caller.
Yes, you gentlemen have a good weekend. Hello to Mr. Hamm, and everything that it has to continue on. All right, thank you, gentlemen.
All right, thank you for calling in.
Right
But
on,
Larry
Che.
Hamm is going to continue
answering
your questions. But thank you for calling in.
Well,
we appreciate
I was
you.
going to ask him if
Bless
he
up,
takes.
bless.
Oh, wait, hold on. He's got a
He's going to
question
answer
for
to
you.
you, yes.
I will ask you a question. When you go to vote, do you take your son in the voting booth with you?
Che, you still there?
No, I think he's gone.
Oh, I think it's gone. All right, cool. So, but you could
What's
we
your
could
point?
ask him. And your point. What was the point you were making with that?
Right. When all my children, I have three daughters. They're all grown now, but from before they could even walk into the voting booth, I actually carried them into the voting booth with me, and I let them put their little fingers on the button. It's true. It's good to vote. And would take them with me every time I went to vote. I try to go early enough so we could go before they had to go to school and I had to go to work. And now,
They'll never forget that.
They're
They're
never
good
forget.
girls.
And
They're all
they
good girls.
all
All grown up now, they're all good
so-
girls.
So getting our kids somehow attached to this voting process is part of it. But I also think we got to get the people that the kids listen to talk about this, and they did. Like was it P. Diddy that had Rock the Vote?
Vote or die, actually.
Vote or die.
P. Diddy was vote or die.
Yeah, well, that's good.
Right,
We've had
right,
hip hop
right.
for the people here in Newark. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We've had hip hop for the people here in Newark. Next week we've got a special segment with young brother Masani from the Bronx on this whole question of peace in the streets. Kings stop killing kings.
Right.
We've got things that we do,
Right.
and that we need to do, and we need to continue to do those things.
Right, and we need to get those big name people who
Like that.
CDs that they
Yes,
buy
yes.
and download and everything to talk about the importance of voting, because obviously they're not listening to us.
Right. and I think that it's really, I think it's even deeper than that, right?
Okay.
Because I think that, and not to say that it's not deep like that, but I'm just saying most people don't vote because they don't see the connection with their lives, because they think that all they do is vote, and then after the election's over, then there's nothing else. And we emphasize voting as if it's a one-shot deal, as opposed to you have to be involved in politics at every end. And voting is simply the end result, but not even the end result. Voting is one tool that you use to get people's attention. I think that, like, the way I think of voting, I don't think it matters who you vote for. I think it matters that your community comes out en masse to vote. I think that voting is a community statement, and that communities that vote en masse, and they know that your voter turnout, that you come out, 60, 70% of the vote will come out, right? I don't think it matters who they vote for as much as politicians know that they can be thrown out if they don't do the right thing.
Yes.
Right? If they don't vote for you or vote for the other person, I think that's one thing. But if you piss that community off, if you do things that hurt, destroy, knock down that particular community,
Mm-hmm.
then you know that you will not last long.
I agree with part of your statement. I certainly agree with you on the point that voting en masse is what makes a difference. On that, we agree. However, I do think there's something to be said about who we vote for. For instance, I'm in disagreement with people who say we got two capitalist parties and it doesn't matter which one you vote for. I totally disagree with that. It's like twins, right? If you ever met twins, I'm talking about identical twins.
Right.
If you know the twins, you'll know that there's a difference even between
You mean
identical
people
twins.
saying there's no difference between Hillary and Trump?
Right, and that's not true. That was not true
Yeah,
in
that's-
16.
I'm glad
It's
you're
not.
saying
It's not true now. Now, is it true that they are both capitalist parties? That they are both parties which receive donations from the major corporations and from rich? Yes, all of that is true. But when you lay down the Republican Party platform against the Democratic Party platform, you see that there is some difference. Now, is it night and day difference? Not necessarily, but it's a difference between a president who will appoint an arch reactionary like Kavanaugh or Clarence Thomas or these other people, and one who might appoint what was his name that didn't get
from President Obama.
Right, or someone who appoints someone like Sonia Sotomayor,
right,
Right.
or
Sotomayor,
Ruth Ginsburg.
right.
And so, like,
Right.
so the quality of those in those
Right.
justices is true. But I think we know that for the presidential elections because our voter turnout is higher in the presidential elections.
Right. Right.
I think the problem that we're having with this election is that most people don't recognize that the most important elections,
Right.
the ones that actually affect your
Right.
life on an everyday basis, more than anything else.
Well, let me
Or
talk
those
about
local
that one.
elections.
We just had a very important vote on the question of well, we didn't actually get to the actual vote on the question of marijuana legalization,
Right.
Right.
and that's a situation where Garland. That's what I was.
Oh, Merrick Garland,
Merrick
right.
Garland.
Garland.
Yeah,
That was
right.
Obama's appointee
Right,
that
but who-
never
who
got.
who
got
was a-
to-
who was
right.
a Republican?
Mitch McConnell said
Right.
you
But
ain't
going
getting
back
nothing here.
to the legalization of marijuana, that's an issue that was taken up by the state legislature. And had there been legalization, number one, it would have impeded this whole prison pipeline where all our young people are going to jail and getting records just for having a joint or having an ounce of marijuana. So it did make a difference because some of the votes that prevented the legalization, or some of the votes that would have prevented legalization, were people coming out of our community. You know, it did not fail just because of white people. It failed because there was some opposition in our community. Just like right now, there's a debate going on about the millionaire's tax. It's a debate because there are actually people in our community who are not supporting the governor's initiative on the millionaire's
Were there
tax.
people in our community not supporting this?
Yes, there are people, black representatives in the state legislature that are saying, no, I don't agree with the millionaire's tax.
Interesting.
And so, and how do you know when it makes a difference? You can only know if you're informed and you're educated about the issues. A lot of people, because they don't know, assume nothing is going on.
Right.
It's like the tree that falls in the forest. If you don't know the tree fell, you don't know that they made a noise.
Like most people don't even know these fights even are going on,
Right.
often on their own behalf.
Right, because
Like the independent prosecutor law, very few people probably knew that was going to be passed or the implications of that.
Right.
But it had an impact on anyone, on any black person or brown person who ever has to deal with the police.
right,
We
and
don't
it's
know
like
until
the
you
governor.
need to
It's
know,
like
right?
the governor's budget. The governor's trying to put forward a budget that will have services in it, that will fund services and programs in our community that are helping our community. There are people supposedly on our side, not supposedly, there are people who are Democrats on the Democratic Party side that are voting against the governor. You know, and this is an unusual situation because we got Democratic governor, Democratic Senate, and Democratic Assembly.
That's right.
Well, you said Democratic.
But here's the, but
I got confused for a second. I was trying to figure out what you were saying.
But John,
Democratic.
but John,
Okay.
here's the funny thing, because remember, in 2008, when President Obama got elected, he had both houses.
Right, you did.
Right, you did.
And we couldn't get anything done because people were fighting.
Well, I mean,
And then instead of, like, how much can we get done?
United,
Because
that's
this is
right.
a limited amount of time.
Right.
If we, Mayor Baraka said something. I remember when he first got elected, and we did a meeting down in Trenton of all the elected officials, and he said we have to do better. He said because we'll have 10 items on the agenda to discuss. We'll get to number 3, and because we don't agree with number 3, everything falls apart. Instead of saying, okay, let's sit 3 over here and let's keep going. And that's the problem. That
But is that problem also because of what we started talking about originally? Like Larry was and say we're like, there was no voter turnout. It was less than a school board election,
Yeah.
which is bad because the school board election should have a lot more people voting in it,
That's
right?
right.
They sure
But
should.
but I think that the reason why politicians believe they can do what they do is because they don't have accountability.
Right.
That's
They
right.
know that they already know who's going to vote for them by name,
Right.
and they already know that that's enough people. All they need to get elected is 5,000 votes.
And they don't
Or
need that
4
because in Orange, we had about 17,600 registered voters. 686 people only cast a vote that day. So
Wait, hold on. Can you repeat that?
we have approximately 17,000
17,000 voters, not
600
citizens, but voters.
Voters,
On the
17
voting roll, 17,000
In Orange.
in Orange alone, 17,000.
And at the end of at 8 o'clock, 686 people had cast a vote.
But I think that's part of our problem. I think that I'm starting to believe that at every rally we hold, at every place we speak, we need to start taking voter registration forms,
Well,
and
probably,
also
we do that.
and also just telling people you have to vote.
But that's where civics
why?
has to come in and tie in that you're going to call in and you're going to be pissed off because your tire went into a pothole. But let's just say in Trenton, the legislators are looking at this money that they had to disperse for streets. And they're looking, and they're going to look at, how do we, it's based on a lot
How
of
do we
things.
cut this pie?
But well, I'm sure if they have a community that comes out and they're at 95 to 100% voting, you know what? They're probably going to be responding to a lot more than a person who doesn't, because they know that these people are going to be calling me if I don't do this and I don't do that. But we have to really teach civics. I just fear, when I learned, I registered to vote in school. Now it's almost like this separation. You don't want the elected officials in school. You don't want to do civics. It's this whole, I don't know, keep people ignorant type of thing, and it's
Right.
very frustrating.
I agree with Jonathan that there's a role for individual responsibility. Like, really, with as many Dr. King holidays as we had, people should know by now that they have a duty to go and vote. But let me finish.
Okay, go
that
ahead.
we have a duty to go and vote. So I accept that a part of this problem is individual initiative. But I also think that the problem with voting in the United States is that apathy is manufactured. We have a system that does not encourage people to vote, that in fact places obstacles in people's way to vote. For instance, in other countries, there's no voter registration. You're automatically registered when you turn 18. Oh, you ain't got to fill out no form. When you move, you got to fill out a form. If you don't vote like here in Essex County, if you don't vote in the last presidential election, you're purged. You got to vote. You got to register. Well, none of that exists in other countries. They have universal automatic registration at 18. They have election day as a national holiday. Everybody's job shuts down and you go and vote. Or they even put the polling places not only in churches and schools, they put them in workplaces.
Right.
So you ain't got to rush home, you know, to try and go vote. You vote right there in your workplace.
Right.
You
You
know,
also see election day in Cuba.
right.
Blow your mind.
Right. So what I'm saying
Or
is
some places that even have compulsory voting.
compulsory,
Right.
like
Where
the
you-
Netherlands.
Right, where you're
That's right.
supposed to, where the law requires you to vote,
Right.
or there'll be a minor fine.
That's right.
Like minor fine just because it's going to irritate you.
Right.
Right.
But basically they're saying we expect you to vote. We don't care who you vote for.
Right.
But you're obligated to go to the polls and make some
Right.
type of decision.
What I was gonna say, you, Chairman, I don't know if it's still, but at one point you were the youngest person elected to the school board.
Mhm.
So how old were you when you elected? Were you 18?
No, I was 17.
You were
I
17.
wasn't old enough to vote.
Okay, so
Wow.
you were 17 years old, elected to the school board. What, you know what I'm saying? Do you see students having that at 17
Yes,
in them?
I see.
Absolutely.
I see it. I see it. These students that were in the, what was it called? The Newark what?
There's the Newark Student Union. The Newark
Right,
Student
and it's,
Union.
They were very strong.
Right.
yes, I saw that. They're still active. They're in college now, but they're
Right.
still active. Students are as active as I was. But see, the mythology is this. I was not a politically conscious student.
Okay.
I was like all the other students. You know, I wanted to go to college. I wanted to run track, and I wanted to have a girlfriend. Those were my three objectives in high school. What happened is that number one, we had a rebellion in Newark in 1967, which touched every person's life. It was inescapable, and it had an impact on our consciousness. You had that. You had a movement. You had James Brown on the radio talking about "Say It Loud." I'm black and I'm proud.
Yeah.
You know. And then in '71 we had a teacher strike. It was the longest teacher strike in history, and the law was if we missed 35 days of school, we wouldn't graduate. I just happened to be the student government president, you know, at that time, and the students said, you know, we already applied to college and we're not going to graduate. So that's what led me to lead a walkout and a sit-in. And that really, even though that's the kind of act you might have in the middle of somebody's political journey,
Right.
it happened right at the beginning of my political journey. So the point I'm trying to make is that I wasn't a politically conscious and active student, that there was a set of circumstances that produced me.
Right.
But now that we know that, those of us who are in some type of position of leadership or authority or power, whatever you want to call it, we have to make it possible. We have to facilitate these young people getting into the political process. And I think one of the ways we do that, we need to get our whoever becomes president in this next Congress to pass universal voter registration. You're automatically registered at 18. You never have to register again. Your voter ID, your voter registration is tied to your social security number. So there's no new number you got to get,
Right.
you know, and so forth. So that these obstacles that keep people from voting. The other thing is, though, is that when I was in the Rainbow Coalition in 1988, when Jesse Jackson ran for president, in 1989, the New Jersey Rainbow Coalition, I was the president of the New Jersey chapter, along with Alan Karcher, who was an assemblyman at that time. We filed suit.
Wow.
We
okay.
tried to actually get same-day registration in New Jersey.
I think I remember that. Right.
Same-day registration. The long story short, the end result was we did not win on the same-day registration, but the judge was sympathetic. And the reason that you have a 21-day advance registration and not a 30-day advance registration was because of the court case that we had. The judge said registering 30 days in advance is too far in advance.
Okay.
People, it should be 21 days. And,
Right.
and that was the result of that court case. But we still believe that there should be same-day registration. There should be nothing that prevents you from voting on that day,
Right.
on
Remember-
election day.
Remember the big issue that just went bananas this year earlier was voting while you were in prison.
Right.
And that was and there are just 3 states.
Talk about it.
3 states. There are 3 states in No, 3 states that you can vote in prison.
Right, Maine, New Hampshire,
Mm-hmm.
just got it, and
Vermont, right?
and Vermont,
There's
right.
3 where you can vote in prison, and they do it in Canada as well. I mean, this was to hear those discussions over that period of time about, no, do you want this person? You know, like, so this whole thing about disenfranchising people,
Right.
is like, you know.
Well, because they're not talking about disenfranchising people. It's that when they look at prisoner, they think black, and they're like, we don't want them voting. I think
Right.
it really is just that simple.
Right.
Black and Democrat, yeah.
Right.
Right. Well, black more than Democrat,
Right.
because like blacks used to be Republican.
Right.
They didn't like us then.
Right.
We became Democrats, didn't like us then.
Right.
So I think the thing, like as Malcolm X said, as Zayid would always remind us, right? Like it don't matter if you're Republican or Democrat. It doesn't matter if you are a Protestant or a Baptist. There are certain common denominators in terms of, I think, for this case, not wanting to vote. Now, I don't think that it's individual. I didn't think it was an individual responsibility thing in terms of the reason why people. I'm not blaming people individually for not voting. I think it's all of our faults, right? Like I think it's the fault of people like me, right? People who know, people who are activists, people like, I think it's collectively we have not created a culture where people understand why they should vote.
But you don't
And I
have the
think
power
that's
to
for-
create that culture. You don't have that power. We don't have that power.
We have that power in our communities.
The people who have, no, we don't. The people who have the power to create culture are the people who own the cultural institutions. The cultural institutions are the institutions that produce your music, your media, your cinema, your art. They're all controlled by the people that run this society. We're not in control. We don't control. Who in this room, we are on the radio, who in this room owns the radio station? None of us. The people who are in control, I'm telling you, this apathy is not an accident.
It's
It is manufactured.
No, I agree.
And until we really come to grips with that, and the other thing we got to come to grips
But
with.
what about the stuff that we can't control, like our school system, right?
Right.
Like, there's no excuse for it. Not every public school student who's 18 or over, and all of their family members should be getting voter registration from
Agreed.
us on the way
We
down.
can
That
do
doesn't
that.
happen, but we
So
can
they
do that.
date, okay.
Why,
5
and,
minutes,
and you
okay.
need and a means of accountability would be to call the Newark school board members in here, sit them in this chair, and ask them, why aren't you registering the students, the 18-year-olds?
Because you know
in
what
Newark
schools
public
do
schools?
register the families and the kids?
Who?
Charter schools.
And that's
Well,
why they
we
win in
just
the
talked about-
election.
We just
Right.
found out, maybe it's not informative, remember we just found out about Newark schools when they were here, that they do have that as a part of graduation. Remember they were talking about
All right,
this?
Newark Public Schools has, as a graduation requirement, you have to register to vote.
Good.
Yeah.
Right?
Good.
That already exists,
Good.
right? I don't know how much
Do
is
they do it?
enforced.
Enforced,
I don't know how much is
exactly.
enforced, but it actually exists, right, within the Newark Public Schools.
Right, exactly.
There's a young 18-year-old fellow, Kason Little, that's running for the school board in Elizabeth.
Yes.
Mm.
And he's still in high school. He's 18.
Right.
Most seniors are 18, right?
Right.
So he's running for the school board. I don't know, did they have the election yet? No,
Right.
it's in November, isn't it? Or did they have it?
Well, I have to check. So if it's not in April, it's in November.
Right.
And
Must
I
be
think
in November.
16-year-olds should be
Okay.
able to vote.
Right.
Yeah.
I think if we started people voting at 16.
But they are really harassing him, I heard.
Oh,
Like,
the
Kason.
Did,
Because they know he's running for
Same
the school
town
board.
where we have a serious fight over police accountability because of some racist and corrupt police leadership in that town that trickles down into the politics.
Right.
This
Wow.
stuff is not
Did you-
separated.
In terms of voting, did you guys hear that Ivanka Trump has put in, and I have to do more reading up, but she's somehow putting in a bid to manufacture voting machines? Have you heard of that? Have you heard of that?
Wow.
Yes, I
Yes, you
have
did.
heard of that.
You did? So I'm like,
She's buying stock, I think, in a company that manufactures voting machines.
Wow. Well, I mean that makes
Wife of the
sense.
sitting president.
And what I'm saying is that
No, the daughter.
The daughter.
Right.
Yeah,
Daughter.
yeah.
Okay.
oh, I understand, because part of the next wave of this is if we can. I go to an ATM, and an ATM has never given me the wrong amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
Never.
I've never gotten the wrong amount of money from an ATM. I
Isn't
count
that
it every
something?
time,
Isn't that
count it
something?
every time, but they never give me the wrong amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't get the voting machines right. Like my money, I go to the ATM. My ATM works every time. It gives me the money that's in my
So
account,
why are we
right?
having so many problems with the voting
with the
machine?
voting machines,
Right, right. Oh, they can hack by a 10-year-old. They can't hack a 10-year-old can't hack my ATM.
Right.
Right.
We need paper trails.
And if they do, they can
We
figure
need
it out really
paper-
quick. Right.
Paper, what is it? Paper reports.
Paper receipts.
Paper receipts.
We need paper receipts so that you vote electronically, but you also look at your paper and you put that in there.
Right.
Well,
And I have to, as we, Sandy was a great opportunity. Sandy, remember they were having all the problems
Right.
and everything. I actually volunteered in the clerk's office, and the governor allowed vote by mail and everything, and by fax and everything. I can't tell you. I literally, so when you give people options, I stood at the fax machine
Wow.
from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. And it was, so when you give people options
They
and
actually
things
use
like
them,
that,
right.
they use them. But when you put them in these little boxes, it's just, it's not something. But that day was very enlightening.
I think we definitely have to continue this conversation about options. How do we change the culture and things that we can do? Because I agree with you that we don't have access to all these other institutions, but I do think that there's some things that we do run. And I think the stuff that we do run, we should use for changing the culture block by block locally as we can. Now, I need shout outs because we're closing out the program. It is 9 o'clock and we are trying to wrap everything up. So we had a great program tonight. We had those high school students earlier and they were great. A shout out to Asia Norton. Thank you so much for all the good stuff that you do. She's a duly elected board member having those seniors on. And also thank you to Congressman Payne, because Congressman Payne was awesome, talking about personal details in his life, diabetes, having that great doctor on who was talking about healthcare disparities and how easy it is, right, for doctors to not cut off your legs, right? And if they just have the right identification for that. So there are a lot of conversations we're going to be continuing for tonight. But shout outs.
Shout out. You want to go?
Let me shout out. She's not here. We want to try and get her here. We've been talking about it. The Central Park 5 case has been in public consciousness because of Ava DuVernay's new film. Shout out to Sharon Salam, the hero of the Central Park 5, the mother of Yusef Salam, who organized those parents and organized the so-called black leaders at that time that got us all in the street and all in the courtroom. Shout out to Sharon Salam and her incredible strength, fighting the criminal justice system, fighting cancer, fighting mass media opposition, the demonization of her son and his friends, and those young men are free as a consequence of that woman's particular strength in refusing to say no and refusing to give up.
Wow, nice. And I didn't know that you were actually involved. Zayid was actually involved in the protest.
Yep.
A lot of the original protest for the Central Park 5. So thank you for sharing that with us. And we're gonna have to, again, that's another thing we gotta go back to and have a conversation about that.
Yes. And shout out to DJ Rhino in his absence. His family, he had a commitment he had to be, but we miss you. I also want to shout out to my pastor, Ronald Slaughter. We're celebrating his birthday tonight, and we have to come dressed up in the year that we was born, and that's why you see me. That's why I'm in. I was born 1967, so I got my dashiki on.
That's what this was. I thought that was your new look.
That's a nice look. I'm gonna say it's a nice look.
I love it.
I got my pick.
You got the fro, the
Listen, don't miss
dashiki.
the pick. I got my pick with the fist on it and everything.
Right
So
on.
I'm out representing the 70s babies. I was born 1967.
Wow.
The summer of love and I guess my
Music
last
was
thought
crazy.
on is that the year I was born, we're still fighting the things that
Yes,
when
we
I was
are.
birthed
That's
into
right.
this world. So.
And congratulations to Pastor Slaughter for being appointed to the parole board.
Yes, yes.
Oh, nice. Okay.
He was appointed to the parole board. That's a big appointment.
That's it. And someone should have on to talk about that as well.
Yeah.
You should have him on.
Very much.
Because
Yeah.
he can actually influence a lot of people's lives.
I'm sure he will.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. As we've seen. Any other shout outs? Any other shout outs we have? Larry, you don't want to shout anyone out?
I shouted out to people at the beginning.
did.
No,
Okay.
I'll shout them out again. The nursing home workers who
You
are
did.
fighting against riverfront rehabilitative care. These are nursing home workers that take care of infirm senior citizens, and they're being paid low wages, and the company is trying to renege on the contract, and we were down there to them down there today supporting them. So
Look, we talk about your book.
All right, cool. So thank.
And I'm sorry, he didn't shout out real quick to Pennington, New Jersey, and stick a pin on that and to the burial ground that we're gonna have to really talk
We
about
got time?
that.
No, not
No,
now.
but we're gonna talk about that for real. So
Yeah,
put
that's
a pin
something.
to the people that are keeping
Pin it.
the. Go ahead.
No, I just put the pin.
Put the pin
Okay.
in. 'Cause,
Okay.
Again, another one of the conversations we are definitely going to have to come back to.
Right.
Yeah. So thank you so much for all coming out. Thank you for all the guests that we've had on.
Right on.
It's been another good week. All politics are local. America's number one political radio hip hop talk show. We are getting ready to go out and we are getting ready to do what we do when we end this. So another good week and another good week that we had here. So
Right.
till next week.